How devastated was Lei Wanhe when he saw Han Li again? From a senior master to a junior, and even needing Han Li's intervention to save them. After the border war, Han Li, relentlessly pursued by Mulan Mages, secretly infiltrated a group of Mulan mortals, traversing the wasteland via secluded paths, heading south. With his far superior divine sense, far exceeding that of his peers, he could clearly sense the fluctuations of Mage's auras from 100 miles away, thus easily avoiding potential interceptions and successfully traversing the wasteland to enter the territory of Fengyuan Kingdom, belonging to the Nine Kingdoms Alliance. Fengyuan Kingdom, as one of the 3 kingdoms bordering Mulan, has always stationed heavy troops on several spiritual mountains along its border, with 9 Kingdoms Alliance cultivators frequently stationed and patrolling. However, in the days since Han Li entered Fengyuan, he had not encountered a single cultivator from his own domain, but instead repeatedly sensed the presence of Mulan Mages roaming and probing. He pondered for a moment, but couldn't recall who it was. After a brief hesitation, he couldn't suppress his curiosity and stealthily made his way towards the battle. With Han Li's speed, this short distance was covered in an instant. He saw bursts of spiritual light ahead, various colored rays crisscrossing and soaring into the sky, accompanied by incessant booming and whistling sounds. The battle was clearly extremely fierce. 5 male and female cultivators, dressed in different attire, were jointly attacking a mage. Han Li immediately recognized that although these 5 core formation cultivators were fully utilizing their natal magic weapons, displaying exquisite techniques, they were being forced back step by step by the layers of yellow mist released by the yellow-robed, bald mage in the center, finding it difficult to defend themselves. The yellow-robed mage had a fleshy face and had reached the early nascent soul stage. He hadn't used any magic weapons, relying solely on a profound technique and his deep cultivation to gain the upper hand. Had this person not seemed unwilling to fight to the death and hadn't repeatedly held back against one of the stunningly beautiful women, intending to capture her alive, these 5 core formation cultivators would likely have already been defeated. However, although Han Li felt the woman looked somewhat familiar, his gaze ultimately settled on a portly old man. This man was surrounded by arcs of silver-white lightning, wielding a giant sword crackling with electricity. His power was arguably the strongest among the 5 core formation cultivators. It's him? The things of this world are truly coincidental, Han Li muttered to himself after clearly recognizing the portly old man's appearance and cultivation method, a complex and unreadable expression on his face. You ungrateful brat! If it weren't for the fact that my cultivation technique lacks a suitable furnace, you wouldn't be alive now. If you don't surrender to me, don't blame me for being merciless. The yellow-robed mage, having fought for so long, finally grew impatient and spoke with a sinister look towards the beautiful woman. Then, he opened his mouth and spat out a yellow feather fan, radiating spiritual light and faintly displaying something. The bald mage grabbed it. Upon seeing this, all the nameless core formation cultivators, including the fat old man, paled, realizing the danger. They knew perfectly well that their opponent hadn't used his full strength. However, they dared not turn and flee. Otherwise, once their combined strength was broken, they would be easily captured one by one, with no chance of survival. Thus, the 5, secretly groaning in despair, could only grit their teeth and once again unleash their full magical power, intensifying their attack. Instantly, the 5 magical treasures amplified their power, dispersing much of the yellow mist and barely reversing their initial momentum. The female cultivator, with skin as smooth as jade and a radiant beauty, wielded a fiery red flying sword magical artifact. Seeing the giant hand descend, while the magical artifact spun wildly in the gale, out of control and unable to save itself, her jade-like face turned pale. The other 4 cultivators, though wanting to save the woman, were also disoriented by the gale and out of control. Only the fat old man, with the deepest cultivation, was in slightly better condition. In his anxiety, he managed to raise one hand, releasing a several-foot-long arc of electricity that struck the side of the giant hand. However, this attack was like a clay ox entering the sea, having no effect whatsoever. Just as the giant yellow hand was about to ruthlessly scoop the woman up, it suddenly dissipated and vanished about 10 feet above her head. At the same time, a shocked and angry shout came from the yellow-robed mage to the side. Then, the hurricane that had trapped the cultivators rapidly diminished and disappeared in the blink of an eye, turning into nothingness. It was as if the gale and the giant hand had been nothing but illusions. The crowd exchanged bewildered glances, then naturally looked towards the bald-headed mage, only to see him turn to the side, his eyes fixed on a distant, empty spot, his face contorted with rage. They were all taken aback. Since you dared to break my spell, why hide so secretly? The yellow-robed mage's expression flashed with malice before he shouted, barely suppressing his anger. He completely ignored the female cultivators who had been there earlier. It's not that I was hiding, but rather that your cultivation is insufficient to see through my presence. Judging from your appearance, you've only recently advanced to the nascent soul stage. Compared to the mags I've seen before, you're far inferior. A man's leisurely voice echoed from the empty space. Then, a flash of azure light appeared, revealing an ordinary-looking young cultivator. It was Han Li himself. Seeing the 5 people trapped and in a critical situation, he unleashed a burst of azure yuan sword chi from afar, instantly sending the feather fan magic weapon flying. The hurricane was easily dispelled. Upon seeing Han Li appear, the fat old man and the others were initially startled. Then, sensing Han Li's nascent soul stage cultivation, they were overjoyed, knowing their lives were saved. The female cultivator quickly bowed respectfully from a distance, saying, "Junior Naiying, thank you for saving my life, Senior Naiying." Upon hearing this, Han Li glanced at the woman, vaguely remembering her. But he couldn't say anything now, instead waving his hand for the woman to rise. It seemed that the woman and the old man hadn't recognized him yet. This was understandable. He had only met these two once before, and now nearly 200 years had passed. It wasn't surprising they didn't recognize him. Having considered this, he turned to the yellow-robed mage and said calmly, "Aren't you leaving? Do I really have to chase you away?" Upon hearing this, the bald mage laughed angrily. "Ha ha, you're just a nascent soul cultivator in the early stages, yet you speak so arrogantly. I, Qin, would like to experience your abilities." As soon as he finished speaking, the bald mage made a hand seal and flicked his finger downwards. Instantly, 2 golden, bullet-shaped objects shot towards the ground in a flash. This action slightly startled Han Li. He didn't stop them, but his eyes narrowed slightly, revealing a hint of interest. The burly man was overjoyed at Han Li's overconfident actions. Without hesitation, he uttered an incantation, and the yellow clouds surrounding him began to churn, instantly enveloping the sorcerer surnamed Qin. A low roar, rise, echoed eerily from the yellow mist. Han Li, hearing this, felt a jolt of surprise. He looked around, but nothing seemed amiss, and just as he was wondering what was happening, a sudden, muffled rumble came from the ground directly below, followed by a sound as if the heavens and earth were splitting. Han Li scanned the ground downwards with his divine sense, then a look of astonishment crossed his face. Without further thought, he flicked his sleeve, and 2 enormous azure streaks, each several meters long, shot out from it, followed by 2 more loud booms below. But Han Li frowned. It seemed his sword energy had failed to achieve its intended effect. Then, with a whooshing sound, 2 yellow dragons, each over 10 feet long and as thick as a man's waist, burst from the ground and soared into the air. They circled the bald in the yellow mist, bearing their fangs and claws, acting as protectors. "What is this?" Han Li was astonished to find that the 2 terrifying yellow dragons were entirely formed from earth and stone, lifelike, giving him a sense of real life. This lifelike aura emanated entirely from the yellow pellets on the dragons' heads. These pellets were embedded between the dragons' brows, gleaming and emitting an eerie yellow light. Sir, try out the power of my spirit-binding beasts first. Go." The bald mage in the yellow mist laughed arrogantly, then unleashed 2 yellow spells on the earth dragons. Instantly, the 2 dragons charged menacingly towards Han Li. Han Li frowned, but then let out a soft sigh. With a single breath, a wisp of azure ice flame shot out, splitting mid-air into even finer flames that struck the earth dragon's coiled head with pinpoint accuracy. With a crackling sound, the earth dragon was instantly covered in a layer of azure ice armor, transforming into 2 ice sculptures that hovered motionless a few feet in front of Han Li. A flash of lightning like azure light, followed by 2 crisp cracking sounds. The 2 earth dragon ice sculptures were easily shattered by the 2 sword energies Han Li had unleashed, then he swept them away with a single hand. 2 yellow pellets were calmly drawn into his hand, then tossed into his storage bag with a glance. "What other supernatural abilities do you have? Show them to me." "I, Han, am eager to witness the true power of your mage spiritual arts," Han Li said leisurely, his expression unchanged. Silence fell over the yellow mist opposite, seemingly astonished by the bald mage's effortless destruction of the 2 earth dragons. "Which sect elder are you, sir? What is your esteemed name?" Among the more renowned nascent soul cultivators, none seemed to match your appearance. "Could you also be a nascent soul cultivator who advanced in the last 100 years? After a long pause, the bald mage's deep voice echoed from within the yellow mist, his arrogance completely gone. "I am but a nobody. You wouldn't know even if I told you. Since you don't intend to attack, I won't stand on ceremony." Han Li's face darkened, his tone suddenly becoming chilling. He slapped his hand against the spirit beast pouch at his waist, and countless golden, shimmering insects swarmed out of the pouch, the golden gold-eating insects that Han Li had carefully cultivated. This was the first time Han Li had truly commanded them in battle. He was just about to test whether this spirit insect was truly effective against nascent soul cultivators. Gold-devouring insects. You actually have gold-devouring insects? And so many. To Han Li's great surprise, before he could even unleash these flying insects to attack, the yellow-robed cultivator opposite him blurted out the gold-devouring insect's true name, his voice filled with fear. Then, without a word, the yellow mist turned around and instantly transformed into a yellow rainbow, soaring away through the air. Its speed was so great that Han Li hesitated for a moment, ultimately abandoning the idea of using his wind and thunder wings to pursue it. In such an open space, if a nascent soul cultivator was solely focused on escaping, he wasn't very confident he could completely annihilate the opponent. After all, once the nascent soul leaves the body, even lightning escape techniques would be slightly inferior. However, the bald-headed mage cultivation wasn't particularly high, yet he recognized the gold-eating insect, which greatly surprised Han Li. Although he had some doubts, Han Li still put the gold-eating insect, which he had just released but hadn't yet accomplished anything, back into his spirit beast pouch. Then, with a calm expression, he slowly flew towards the fat old man and the other cultivators. "Thank you for your great kindness, Senior. May I ask your esteemed name?" "This junior, Lei Wanhe of Huangfeng Valley, is deeply grateful." The fat old man hurriedly flew a few steps ahead before Han Li even got close, bowing deeply. Apart from the female cultivator named Nangong, who had already given her name, the others also stepped forward to pay their respects. Shiqian of the Giant Sword Sect, Tang Minghua of the Hidden Moon Sect, and Qian Huan of Chenqiu Fortress greet you, Senior, the three said almost in unison, their faces filled with respect and gratitude. Senior, Han Li stroked his chin, a strange look on his face. The plump old man was none other than Uncle Master Lei, who had once exchanged a pill formula for spiritual herbs with him, and now he was addressing him as Senior. Although this was perfectly normal according to the rules of the cultivation world, Han Li couldn't help but feel a strange unease. As for the stunning woman named Nangong, she was Senior Sister Nai, whom he had met once before and who had protected the Murong brothers with the Lei spirit root. Although Han Li hadn't had any direct interaction with her, he knew from what he'd seen and heard that she possessed extraordinary talent and inner and outer beauty. Countless male disciples had admired her back then. Unexpectedly, after all these years, she had also achieved golden core formation. While Han Li silently observed Lei Wanhe and Nangong with a complex expression, Lei Wanhe also harbored his own doubts. The senior before him was not only ridiculously young and possessed an extraordinary ability to preserve his youth, but for some reason, Han Li felt a strange familiarity with his seemingly ordinary face, as if he had seen it somewhere before. This surprised him and made him somewhat uneasy. Nangong stared at Han Li with her beautiful eyes, a hint of surprise flashing in their depths. She seemed to have noticed something as well. Han Li, of course, wouldn't remain silent. After smiling, he finally spoke. "It seems that after our parting years ago, Senior Uncle Lei truly doesn't remember me. However, the pill formula you gave me back then has indeed been of great help." "Senior Uncle? Pill formula, you are." Lei Wanhe's mouth gaped open in shock when Han Li addressed him as Senior Uncle, unable to close it for a moment. But upon hearing about the pill formula, he seemed to remember something and stammered in astonishment. The others, upon hearing this, were equally dumbfounded. The fact that this nascent soul stage senior suddenly addressed Lei Wanhe as Uncle Master was something that left them completely bewildered. Only Nangong, upon hearing this, looked Han Li up and down in surprise, her beautiful face changing drastically as she exclaimed, "Your Master Li's disciple, Han Li Jr. Brother Han." Her voice was filled with disbelief. "I didn't expect fellow Daos Nai to recognize me," Han Li said, genuinely surprised. Han Li was unaware that during his chi refining stage, due to his low profile and low cultivation level, very few people knew or recognized him. But after surviving the blood trial, successfully establishing his foundation establishment, and being accepted as a disciple by Li Huiyuan, many observant individuals began to notice him. This senior sister Nai was one of them. When the 6 demonic sects invaded Yu Kingdom, and he killed numerous demonic cultivators of the same level, his reputation soared among the lower level disciples. Although they hadn't met again, the impression he left on senior sister Nai had only deepened. Now, Han Li's appearance was exactly the same as when he first met her. He only mentioned the beginning, and naturally, she remembered the once famous junior brother Han, and blurted out in surprise, "You really a junior nephew Han from back then?" Lei Wanhe swallowed hard, his gaze fixed blankly. While anything strange could happen in the cultivation world, and it wasn't uncommon for a cultivator with exceptional talent to rise from disciple to peer of their elders, the sudden transformation of a foundation establishment junior into a nascent soul senior was something even someone as knowledgeable as Lei Wanhe couldn't immediately comprehend. Uncle Lei, there's no need to be surprised. However, this isn't the place to talk. Let's discuss this further on the way, Han Li said calmly, glancing around. I dare not accept such a title as senior uncle. Since Senior Han has already advanced to the nascent soul stage, he is my senior. I will follow your instructions. Lei Wanhe's face flushed and paled several times before he finally spoke with a wry smile. His words maintained the initial respect, showing no sign of disrespect. Regardless of Han Li's past status, now that his cultivation and supernatural abilities far surpassed his own, he naturally dared not presume to accept such a title from Han Li. The other three cultivators finally understood the relationship between Han Li and Lei Wanhe. After exchanging bewildered glances, their faces were filled with strange expressions. Han Li showed no surprise upon hearing this. After a brief silence, he nodded in acceptance. Since fellow Daoist Lei has said so, I, Han, will not stand on ceremony. We must leave here immediately. Your escape speed is probably a bit slow. Let me give you a ride. After saying this, Han Li slapped his hand into his storage bag, and with a flick of his wrist, a small, exquisite object appeared in his hand. After tossing it gently to the side, a flash of white light appeared, and a finely crafted, square-shaped vehicle appeared before them, the very same wind-riding chariot that Han Li had recently acquired. At this moment, under the activation of his magic, the chariot rapidly expanded, becoming over 10 zhong in size. Everyone, get in the chariot, Han Li ordered without ceremony. Lei Wanhe and the others naturally had no objections and all entered the chariot in a flash. After Han Li stepped into the wind-riding chariot, he immediately channeled a small amount of spiritual energy into the vehicle. After a slight tremor, the flying chariot transformed into a white streak, soaring through the air at a speed far exceeding that of ordinary magical artifacts. It vanished without a trace in an instant. Seeing the chariot's incredible speed, the others were overjoyed. Knowing that with this chariot, the sorcerer would naturally be unable to catch up, their previously anxious hearts finally settled. Fellow Taoists, Fengyuan Kingdom should be almost entirely under the control of the sorcerers. Why are you all here, and even more so, blocked by a high-level sorcerer? You should know that if this place weren't so remote, even if I were to intervene, I probably wouldn't have been able to escape so easily, Han Li asked casually as he drove the chariot. The 5 men exchanged glances, each with a different expression. Lei Wanhe, clearly their leader, hesitated for a moment before speaking. Senior, you may not know this, but we were forced into this situation. We were originally ordered by the Alliance to carry out an important mission. However, we were delayed for several days in a certain place, and upon returning, we discovered that Fengyuan Kingdom had been invaded by the Mulan people. Left with no other choice, we had to choose a secluded path to fly back. But along the way, we encountered some low-level mags and had to eliminate them. Who would have thought that a nascent soul stage mage would be nearby? Just after killing the last low-level mage, that old monster discovered us and gave chase. Although we knew we were no match for him, if we split up to escape, we would only be wiped out faster, so we had no choice but to fight to the death. If it weren't for our lucky encounter with Senior Han, we probably wouldn't have escaped death. Lei Wanhe expressed his gratitude while glancing at his former junior disciple, Han. To be honest, even now, it all still felt like a dream. Han Li, however, lost interest in asking further questions and simply gave a faint hum. But after a while, he asked again. Fellow Daoist Lei, how is my master, Li Huiyuan? Senior Han, junior brother Li perished over 100 years ago in a battle with the Mulan Dharma master. His wife, unable to form her golden core, also passed away soon after her time was up. There was no point in hiding it, so Lei Wanhe answered honestly. None of my fellow disciples have formed their golden cores. Han Li trembled slightly upon hearing this, a hint of sadness flashing across his face, and asked again. No, although 2 or 3 of junior brother Li's disciples had good aptitude and advanced to the pseudo-core realm, they ultimately lacked the necessary opportunities to form their golden cores. Lei Wanhe said with a sigh. Han Li fell completely silent after hearing this. The images of Yu Kuan, Song Meng, and Zhong Wenyang's flashed through his mind. Fragments of past encounters also surfaced in his memory. After a long pause, he let out a long sigh. Since these fellow disciples had failed to form their golden cores, there was no need to ask further. They had most likely passed away by now. Thinking back to what happened in Huangfeng Valley, it all seemed like a distant dream. The low-level disciples of Huangfeng Valley had changed many times over. Senior Han, do you have any intention of returning to Huangfeng Valley? Nangong suddenly asked. Return to Huangfeng Valley? I have no interest in that. I am now an elder of the Luoyun sect of the Heavenly Tao Alliance, and I am quite content there. I have no plans to go back, Han Li said calmly, his eyebrows twitching slightly. Upon hearing Han Li's words, disappointment flashed across Nangong's face, while Lei Wanhe's expression shifted, a complex look crossing his face. The other three were not familiar with Han Li at all and naturally dared not interrupt. I wonder if Senior knows Xiao Kuya. Nangong hesitated for a moment before asking again. Xiao Kuya? Of course I know her. You know that little girl. Han Li was taken aback, replying somewhat strangely. An image of a quirky, clever little girl flashed through his mind. He had a very deep impression of this little girl whom he had personally introduced to Huangfeng Valley years ago. But immediately following, the image of the old man, Senior Brother Ma, flashed through his mind, a sense of desolation rising within him. At the old man's age, it was impossible for him to have formed a golden core. This person who had been closest to him in Huangfeng Valley was probably already a handful of dust. Little girl, junior sister Xiao is no longer a little girl. She has long been married and entered the core formation stage decades ago, Nangong said with a mixture of joy and reproach, a faint smile playing on her lips. Oh, she's also reached the core formation stage. That really surprised me. Han Li paused for a moment, then chuckled softly. I've heard junior sister Xiao mention several times how Senior Han guided her into the sect. Junior sister Xiao has always been deeply grateful to Senior Han and misses him dearly, Nangong said gently. Back then, I only guided her into Senior Brother Ma's sect because I saw her good aptitude. It was just a spur-of-the-moment decision. Now things have changed, so what is the point? Han Li's smile faded, and he said calmly. Seeing that despite their attempts to persuade him, Han Li still seemed unwilling to return to Huangfeng Valley, Nangong and Lei Wanhe exchanged a glance and could only offer a silent, bitter smile. These two weren't stupid. They naturally guessed most of the reason why Han Li didn't want to go back. Since Han Li wasn't among the core disciples who were exiled to the Nine Kingdoms Alliance back then, this former Foundation establishment cultivator was naturally used as bait and abandoned. No wonder he was so indifferent to Huangfeng Valley, showing no intention of returning. Just as the two were feeling somewhat helpless, Han Li, after a moment of silence, suddenly asked the middle-aged cultivator from the Hidden Moon sect. Does your Hidden Moon sect have a female cultivator named Nangong Wan? How is she now? Han Li's voice was somewhat low. Ah, Senior, do you know Aunt Nangong? Aunt Nangong is currently overseeing things within the sect, and everything is fine. The middle-aged cultivator named Tang Minghua was initially taken aback, but then replied respectfully. Aunt? She has also advanced to the nascent soul stage. Han Li was surprised, but his words couldn't hide his joy. Uncle Master Nangong successfully condensed her nascent soul over 100 years ago. She's now one of our sect's elders. Are you an old acquaintance of Uncle Master Nangong, Senior? The middle-aged cultivator asked in great detail, his manner extremely attentive. For him, if he could cultivate a good relationship with a nascent soul cultivator, the benefits would be immeasurable in the future. An old acquaintance, you could say so. I received a great favor from your esteemed Uncle Master back then, and I've always wanted to see her again. Unfortunately, I've been busy with other matters for so many years, and haven't had the chance. Han Li sighed, a hint of dazedness flashing across his face as he murmured. Although Uncle Master Nangong rarely receives guests, it's easy for you to see him if you truly wish. In 3 months, Uncle Master Nangong will hold a dual cultivation ceremony with Elder Wei of the Huare sect, officially becoming cultivation partners. This ceremony was originally only for high-ranking cultivators within the alliance. But since Senior Han is an old acquaintance of Uncle Master Nangong, if you were to attend, the entire sect would certainly. Dual cultivation ceremony. Han Li's mind went blank. He couldn't hear anything more. He abruptly turned around, his voice chilling as he asked. Indeed, Elder Wei Liching of the Huare sect has formed his nascent soul in just 300 years. His supernatural abilities are unfathomable. He is a rare cultivation prodigy in Qiannan. Our sect and the Huare sect went to great lengths to bring this matter to fruition. Han Li's chilling expression startled the middle-aged cultivator. Various strange thoughts raced through his mind, but under Han Li's icy gaze, he involuntarily uttered them. Lei Wanhe and the others, seeing this, all wore strange expressions. Even a fool could see at this point that Han Li's relationship with Nangong Wan of the Yang Yu sect seemed far from simple. Otherwise, why would Han Li react so strongly upon hearing this? But what happened next surprised everyone. Han Li's expression turned cold, and after staring at the middle-aged cultivator for a moment, the coldness vanished instantly. Instead, his voice softened, and he said gently, "Fellow Daoist Tang, there's no need to panic. I mean no harm. I'm just a little excited to hear that the person I once admired is suddenly going to marry someone else. Now that I know about this, I naturally want to attend my friend's wedding." Hearing Han Li speak so frankly, the middle-aged cultivator breathed a sigh of relief and repeatedly expressed his welcome. But Han Li only smiled faintly and said nothing more. Lei Wanhe and the others also relaxed. After all, the 6 sects of Yu Kingdom were now practically one entity. Naturally, they didn't want to cause any more trouble. Next, Han Li casually asked about some matters related to the 6 sects of Yu Kingdom, none of which were of great importance. The 5 of them naturally answered them all. Upon hearing the words of Elder Ling Hu of Huangfeng Valley that his time was short, Han Li frowned, but then relaxed as if he hadn't heard a thing. "By the way, does your uncle Nangong have a cousin named Nangong Ping, who should also be a cultivator of the Hidden Moon sect?" Han Li seemed to remember something and asked casually. "Nangong Ping? This junior has never heard of her. Uncle Nangong has always cultivated alone, and I've never heard of anyone mentioning a cousin." "Senior, are you mistaken?" the middle-aged cultivator asked, somewhat puzzled, after a moment of surprise. Han Li was stunned upon hearing this. But after taking a deep breath, he immediately pressed on. "This female cultivator, Nangong Ping, should be a core formation cultivator in your sect. Could you have forgotten about her?" Han Li's voice became urgent. "If our sect truly had such a person, how could I not know? I can assure you, Senior, that our sect indeed has no such woman," Tang Minghua said with a wry smile, almost swearing an oath. "Fellow Daoist Tang is right. If the Hidden Moon sect truly had such a core formation female cultivator, we would also know. There is indeed no such person. May I ask where you learned of her, Senior?" Lei Wanhe couldn't help but interject, a look of surprise on his face. "It's nothing, perhaps I've made a mistake," Han Li said, but his expression was strange, mixed with a hint of bewilderment. With Han Li's shrewdness, he naturally knew that the Nangong Ping from that day was not Nangong Wan's cousin at all, but clearly Nangong Wan herself in disguise. No wonder she hadn't attacked him severely that day, and her expression and words at parting were so strange. For the next while, Han Li seemed to have completely lost interest in speaking, silently steer the wind chariot forward with a gloomy face. The others also noticed that Senior Han was in a bad mood, so naturally no one dared to talk loudly in the chariot. For a moment, the wind chariot was silent. After half a day, they reached a deserted hilltop, where Han Li stopped the wind chariot. "I will part ways with you here, fellow Taoists. It's only a day's journey to the border of Fengyuan Kingdom. It's already a safe place. I have other matters to attend to, so I won't see you off any further." Han Li stood on the chariot and calmly began to urge them on. Lei Wanhe and the others naturally dared not say anything more. After thanking Han Li again for saving their lives, they all flew out of the wind chariot. Han Li didn't say another word. Immediately, he changed direction, steered the chariot through the air, and vanished without a trace in an instant. "Fellow Daoist Lei, is this Senior Han truly a disciple of your Yellow Maple Valley, and even your junior disciple?" Another older cultivator from Chenkyu Fortress, seeing the wind chariot disappear, finally couldn't help but ask Lei Wanhe again for confirmation. "What, do I look like someone who lies?" Lei Wanhe frowned, speaking with annoyance. Although he had been saved by Han Li today, the junior from back then had surpassed him in cultivation and suddenly become a genuine senior, forcing him to carefully apologize. No one would be in a good mood. He. "Brother Lei, there's no need to be angry. I just find it a bit strange. If what you say is true, this Senior Han should be about the same age as fellow Daoist Nai. Fellow Daoist Nai, I wonder how many years you've cultivated to reach your current level." This cultivator surnamed Chen from Chenkyu Fortress didn't move angered. He turned to Naiying and asked seriously. "I cultivated for over 200 years to reach the early stage of core formation," Naiying replied, her expression slightly changing as if she understood what he meant. "So, this Senior Han also formed his nascent soul at just over 200 years old. Do you know what that means?" The cultivator surnamed Chen stroked his sparse beard and said solemnly. "Could it be that Brother Chen means the burly man surnamed Cha from the Giant Sword sect?" exclaimed in surprise. Indeed, this person has a good chance of reaching the nascent soul stage. The last recorded nascent soul cultivator in Qiannan was tens of thousands of years ago. Although he disappeared from the cultivation world shortly after reaching the nascent soul stage, he swept across Qiannan without rivals during that short period. He almost unified the entire Qiannan, including both righteous and demonic sects, as well as neutral sects. No one could resist a nascent soul cultivator, even if he was only at the early stage. The cultivator surnamed Qian said solemnly, "Brother Qian, you exaggerate a bit. Although this senior Han has cultivated to the nascent soul stage in a short time, reaching the nascent soul stage is an unattainable goal. It's not that easy to do. In fact, even reaching the late nascent soul stage would be enough for his sect to dominate a region. That is indeed a possibility." Nangong thought for a moment and then smiled. "I'm overthinking it. But if nothing unexpected happens, this senior Han will become a major figure influencing the entire Qiannan region within the next 1,000 years. And he has such a deep connection with your valley. If we can bring him into the 6 sects, perhaps it won't be long before our 6 sects can return to Yu Kingdom." The cultivator surnamed Qian said slowly, a glint of light flashing in his eyes. "A connection? Fellow Daoist, you saw it just now. Although Senior Han was born in our Huangfeng Valley, he is now an elder of the Luoyun sect of the Heavenly Dao Alliance. In terms of status and sect power, what does our valley have to offer him? Besides, you've all seen that he has no intention of returning at all." Lei Wanhe said with a sigh after a moment of silence. Upon hearing this, the others were also speechless. Why does this Senior Han treat your valley like this? He is, after all, from your valley. Isn't there any room for redemption? The burly man from the Giant Sword sect said with some disbelief. "I can't reveal the specifics, but I doubt the chances are high. However, I see he seems to have a close relationship with Senior Nangong of the Hidden Moon sect. Perhaps Senior Nangong could try to persuade him. Even if he can't rejoin our 6 sects, building a good relationship should be achievable." Lei Wanhe shook his head first, then changed the subject, speaking to the middle-aged cultivator from the Hidden Moon sect. "Well, maybe. I need to ask Senior Han about his relationship with Uncle Master Nangong back in the sect," Tang Minghua said somewhat uncertainly. "Forget it, this kind of matter of recruiting nascent soul cultivators isn't something we can decide. Let's leave it to the elders. Senior Han should appear at the grand ceremony in 3 months. We should hurry back to the Alliance. This place isn't exactly safe," Lei Wanhe suddenly said, glancing around and frowning. The others were startled upon hearing this and lost all interest in discussing the matter further. The 5 of them immediately transformed into 5 streaks of light and fled. Although Lei Wanhe spoke lightly, he was secretly troubled on the way. How could he explain this to Elder Linghu within the sect? Could he simply say that a disciple he had abandoned years ago had now become someone no weaker than himself, and that he was deeply dissatisfied with Huangfeng Valley because of what happened back then? Wouldn't that be directly criticizing his senior uncle? Sighing helplessly a few times, Lei Wanhe could only silently continue his journey.